This is News Guardian. With Greg Aldridge and Chip Tarbutton on WFJX Fox Radio 910.
It's time for Alan Chip.
All right. Woo, baby. Okay.
Wow, Al's fired up today. So welcome to News Guardians on Fox Radio 910. I'm your News Guardian, Chip Tarbutton, and as usual, we have Al Bedrosian, Roanoke County Board of Supervisors member, and he's fired up today. He's dressed resplendently in a purple dress shirt and ready to entertain and enlighten you.
Yeah, this is a different kind of color, but every time I wear this, somebody will always say, ooh, I like that color. So I guess,
bold colors, I think, are good. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, none of this wimpy pastel stuff, right? Just get solid, bold kind of stuff, and people know right where you stand. I like it.
Yeah, that's it.
Something like that. And I've even got these little croquis here. I think that's what these are called, right? Yeah, they hold up your glasses. Yeah. Well, my daughter, Madeline, made this for me out of these
They're very pretty.
Thank you very much.
Well, you can get away with a lot of murder because you said the right thing. My daughter made them for me.
That's exactly right.
You have no choice but to wear them.
But I liked it's nice color, and I told her make me some different kind of colors, and I'll wear them. And I wear them to my board meetings. I like it.
Well, I who could say no to that?
That's right.
So as usual, there's lots to talk about. Troops are going back to Iraq. I actually went to a family function this weekend out of town. And what I found was interesting because most of the people that are there don't really pay much attention to politics, but they know I do. So the universal conversation was, man, stuff is messed up. Stuff is messed up. Wow, I can't believe all the stuff is messed up. So that seems to sort of be a universal kind of mantra for people. Are you finding that in your day-to-day life?
Yeah, and what that shows me is just, it's just too much. It's just overbearing. It's gotten so tangled. Somebody made a good comment once that we need people to untangle what's going on. It's like you've got this big knot, and it's just such a mess that everybody just says, it's just a mess. But, you need people that will diligently go in and untangle that mess. It doesn't have to be like this. So, but you're right. I think it's gotten to a point where people just throw up their hands and get on with other things in life, which, getting on with other things in life is an important thing because there is more than just government and politics. But the governing of a county, a state, a nation, I think is extremely important. And, I think the way I guess we had this thing set up was that you'd have honorable people that would do that job while others could live their life. And then we took turns doing it, kind of like standing guard. But then it became the people that went to do that role got co-opted. And then they became, they were the enemy after a while, and it's become a mess. Well, so it has become.
There's two stories on newsguardians.com that speak to that. One is from the city about... There was an article in the paper this morning about the library project on Grandin Road for Raleigh Court. They're going to spend $3.2 million on expanding the library there because, being $350 million in debt.
It's not enough.
We got to
get that up, baby.
Because, and you made the point, most politicians tend to be, they tend to be malleable when it comes to public opinion. So if it looks like everybody's on one side of an issue, politicians tend to gravitate towards that side of an issue. That's
right.
So if you have a meeting about libraries, for example, and everybody and 20 some odd people all show up and they've got a little sticker on their shirt that says,
I support
the library, and they're very vocal, they're very loud, and they clap at the right times, and they politic a little bit before the meeting. It becomes difficult. In fact, in this story, if you go to newsguardians.com, and the story is from the Roanoke Times, there was an opponent that spoke. Now, he wasn't worried about the money. I mean, nobody in Roanoke City is worried about spending $3.2 million. That's no big deal. That's his money. But, there's plenty more of it. But he spoke out against the fact that the way they were planning on doing the expansion, the building was going to be too close to Grandin Road. It was going to cause problems from a traffic flow perspective.
Correct. That's the new style, though, I think, or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but he acknowledged during his time that it was not a bit of fun to speak in opposition to the design. Because he got up and he was a very unpopular guy because we want a library. I mean, it was as if they were fighting for, an end to segregation or something important. But no, we got to have this library. Our entire future depends on having a library in Raleigh Court.
I'll tell you, Chip, this is going on all over the country, I think, and even in Roanoke County. These libraries, it is, I don't know what it is. Well, I do know what it is. I think I do know what it is. But they are creeping in all over the place, and people are becoming so passionate about the library. You're right. Like,
library's become the new church.
It has. And you know what? It's interesting you say that. Now that they're opening a couple of them on Sunday in Roanoke County. But it has, and they've even made hints about that. It's the new community centers are going to be the libraries. And we've talked about on this show, and articles have been written about it. Heritage Foundation wrote an article. It is this new area for government dissemination of information. And so people collect, they come there. We're even now going to be serving alcohol weekend at libraries. They have community rooms. They have, the one at Southwest County, 200-seat auditorium.
It's a beautiful place.
Oh, man. I mean, think about this, though. What private business could ever compete? I mean, because the one in Southwest County, $20 million for that thing. And, who has this money except government that can go into major, major debt? What private institution could put together that kind of money to create meeting places and cafe bars and stuff like that? They got the market cornered now. These libraries will come, and they are going to corner the market, and they got a monopoly.
But you got even better in Roanoke County because you have your own pool and fitness center.
That is correct, and that's the role of government. If you could chart and prioritize the role of government, I think pools would be first. I think weightlifting equipment and exercise equipment would be second, and then I think a place to go and use a computer would be third. Looking up on Facebook and all that kind of stuff would so those are the top priorities.
Well, a lot sexier than keeping up the roads and the stormwater stuff. Because I mean, that's boring. Who wants to do that?
It is boring.
Because I know that in Roanoke City, I looked at their priorities before the May election.
Yes,
I looked at the priorities for infrastructure and fixing the stormwater situation in Roanoke City was 22nd on a list of 29 priorities. So I'm guessing, free library stuff was well above that.
Yeah, as it should be.
But, even the paper acknowledged, I mean, it actually was a pretty good article for a Roanoke Times article. It actually was, I think it accurately portrayed the meaning. It said the enthusiasm for the project overwhelmed the concerns that the expanded building will sit too close to Grandin Road. Enthusiasm for the project because no one even talked about the $3.2 million, and that wasn't like, it's no big deal. But Bill Bestpitch, who's a council member, if you don't know, this is a shout out to Greg Aldridge because Greg loves this line more than any other line that people use. This is one that this is like nails on a chalkboard to Greg Aldridge. So this is for him if you're listening, Greg. This is what Bill said. Apparent universal agreement that something needs to be done. I don't want to see the perfect become the enemy of the good.
Ooh.
The very good. That was his quote. Now the whole perfect become the enemy of the good is the one that irritates him greatly. But, I mean, first of all, is there really universal agreement that we have to spend $3.2 million on a library? Well, if you're a board of supervisors member, it probably looks that way because those 20-some-odd people showed up with the stickers.
Right. That is a good point, Chip. Of those people that participate, that show up, the percentages seem high. It's the average guy that, doesn't like all this stuff but has given up, that doesn't show up, he doesn't get counted. This is very, very, very important rule in government. He who shows up most likely is going to win. And
yes.
The sad thing, but yet the thing that provides a lot of opportunity is that very few people show up. If 20 or 30 people on the other side actually show up, the Board of Supervisors, City Council people would be running scared. 20 or 30. That's all it requires.
Yep.
That's all we need, 20 or 30. And you can't find it out of a valley that has a couple 100,000 people.
Look, there's a soccer game on last night.
I know it. And even I watched that soccer game because that was awesome.
It was awesome.
But here's the deal. Now, here's the deal. I had time for the soccer game, but then I also prioritized that I have time for these other things also. And I always tell people that you can do both. You know, you got a brain. You can multitask. You can enjoy life at that time, the allotted time slots. Now, you don't have to watch every single soccer game because that's going to take you away. You can watch the ones that are good and important to you and you like, and then you can also dedicate time to things that are very important.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I got a text message from one of our listeners.
Okay.
She was talking about the schools. This is the other thing. I think she makes a great point. An overly aesthetically featured school that doesn't add value to education but adds to the architectural portfolio. And not that any of the new schools. I went to the debate at one of the high schools in the county, and I was like, wow, this place is nice. Really nice. I mean, it's nice. It's a beautiful building. Do you really need that to educate kids? Just saying.
I know that's going to be one of these arguments, though. You know, it's a tough one to win because
I care about my children more than you do because I have an architecturally beautiful building.
Yeah. Well, think about it. If you know, and this is one thing that I disagree with Supervisor Church, although we agree on a lot of things, is the amount of money we're spending on these schools. And you know, the one in Glenver is $25 million. It's just, you know, it's important, yeah, education, and we have all agreed, no, we homeschool our children. We have agreed as a community, though, that we're going to have public government education. Okay, so that's another topic altogether about what that. But if you're going to agree that you're going to have that, then you do need a building for children. But really, I mean, how can you afford to be spending that kind of chunk of money on a continuing basis now?
Wouldn't you mean a simple building with a lot of technology would be cheaper and would probably get you a lot farther than, I mean, you know.
You are correct.
But we got to have arches and beautiful buildings. But, you know, city in particular, one of the issues that came up in the last election was the Detroit meme that Roanoke's kind of doing the same thing. Roanoke City is doing the same things that Detroit did. And I'm guessing that if they keep piling up the debt like they're wont to do, the proximity of the library to Random Road will be the least of their concerns.
That's correct. And, you know, I think a lot of these governments, what they try to do is just outrun it. They keep piling on the debt, but keep building stuff, and those people that are in office just hope that it doesn't collapse on their watch.
Well, it's okay, because it'll all bring money in. You know?
It'll all bring money in, and maybe one day that money will, like, win the lottery. It's kind of a lottery thing. You know, we just keep buying lottery tickets that one day, we're losing money, we're probably going to go into debt, but there's a chance one day we'll big, and then, you know, all of our problems will be taken care of.
Lord knows a really nice library or archicturally interesting school is going to bring in a lot of
big bucks, baby,
money.
Yes.
All right, well, we're over time, so we're going to take our first break. When we come back, we'll ask Al about what's cooking in Roanoke County, and we've got a story later on we'll talk about insider trading on Wall Street and why that no one should be surprised by this, and more on News Guardians on Fox Radio 910.
News Guardians on Fox Radio 910.
And we are back. And I got a note during the break that Al Bedrosian's library card has been revoked. So, no, that's not true.
I know. You know what is so funny, though, about that? You know, I don't really consider myself as a government person. But when I do go places where it's government, you know, run like a library or something to do, when I walk out, I kind of think, ooh, were they looking at me kind of funny, like, there's that guy coming in again? You know,
he hates us.
I know it. And I try to just smile everywhere I go and just say hi and all that kind of stuff because I'm not against the people in these things. You know, we're all in this thing together, but I do have an opinion, and I'm not going to stop stating it for what I think is the good of the county and really the right thing to do. So, anyway, I've had my piece. And if I do get my card revoked,
I'm just kidding. They haven't revoked your...
Not yet.
At least as far as I know. Now, this is an off week for the council, correct? So you don't have a meeting this week, but you have one next Tuesday.
Don't call it council.
Oh.
You know, council, isn't that like the
Board of Supervisors? I'm sorry.
What is that international group called? The Council of, I don't know. There's that thing, Trilateral Commission or something.
There's a lot
we're
of
not in a
those.
council. Okay, yeah, we are a board of supervisors. So
I stand corrected.
It is. It is the week off. So next Tuesday. So again, it's the second and the fourth Tuesday of the month. So it's not every other Tuesday, second and fourth. And a lot of things. Last time we had a couple good things come up in the meeting. Unfortunately, we voted. One of the votes was to try to move everything downstairs on the first floor. And I know these things may seem very petty to a lot of people, but we're trying to make government more open. At least I would like to see it that way. So normally we'll do our meetings downstairs at 3 o'clock, and then we move upstairs to what they call work sessions. And we get into this kind of cramped room where all the staff members come, and the average public person doesn't like that. They don't really show up at that thing. We're trying to move it all downstairs. Just stay downstairs. Downstairs is a lot nicer and freer. You can kind of come in and come out. You got nice, comfortable chairs. That got voted down, though. Butch Church and I were the ones that voted to move things downstairs. And actually, I amended it to say, hey, let's just try it for 3 months. Just come downstairs for 3 months. Let's do everything downstairs, not go up and down. And I said, just a trial period, 3 months, 6 times. And we'll just see if it really works or not. Got voted down. So that was unfortunate. We'll have to try to do that again.
Well, do you think that's because of the idea itself, or just because now it's gotten to a point where if it's Al's idea, they're just going to say no?
Right. Well, this one actually was Butch Church's idea, which I thought was a great idea, and he's brought it up before. And I'm not really sure of the reasoning. Some of them sound logical. Like, when we're in the county boardroom, we do sit higher than everybody else. We're kind of on this dais or whatever. And so
right.
They say, well, it's not like really comfortable. Like upstairs, we all sit around.
So you're always equal, and
yeah,
makes
but
sense
you know what?
to a certain extent.
But then why are we having any of the meetings in that room? Because we all should be equal all the time, right? I mean, why is that then? Let's have everything on the 4th floor. I mean, we're no better than anybody else, so that's a little fishy. I think the nice thing about downstairs is it really is a lot easier to move in and out. You come for 10 minutes and get up and walk out, and it doesn't bother anybody. If you did that upstairs, you'd be climbing over people's knees and stuff. I think it's a lot more comfortable downstairs. But anyway, so that's the deal. The other thing, we brought up the prayer issue again has been brought up. And I only bring this up because you'll be hearing more about it. It's not going to go away since the Supreme Court decision, which kind of allowed organizations to free up a little bit their policies on prayer. It makes it a little bit easier. So I'm trying to say, hey, we really shouldn't have any policy. Just come in and pray. My goodness, we've made things so complicated nowadays. I have my opinion, but I think people should be able to come in and pray. And if you want to participate, you participate. If you don't, you don't. Hallelujah. We're in America, religious freedom. So that was very, very important. The other thing is the ICLEI. That's still going on.
That was over.
Last remnant. Well, here's the deal. We've stopped. We did not join again. Now, I have heard people say, well, we're still finishing up because we have membership until the end of the year. Whoa. What do you mean we're finishing up? We're not giving any money in the budget for anybody's time to be used on ICLEI issues. So if we're not paying money for it, who's going to be doing anything about it? So I've written a letter saying we need to have a document that states we're out. Now, just as of July 1, we're not doing anything with it. And then RC Clear is the citizens group that was attached to this international group about global warming. And we basically voted in the last meeting to just sever ties. So we need to have that all official. It's done, and then start thinking about new ways to deal with clean air, clean water issues.
And they've decided that they're not going to help you with clean air and clean water, correct?
Yeah, and it was amazing. We were in a work session, and we're just talking to them, and it was what I thought it was all along, which was kind of obvious because they stated in their documentation they are interested in climate change issues. And again, as I say all the time, climate change issues and clean air, clean water are two separate paths. They're two separate things altogether. The global warming groups try to bring it all under umbrella so that they suck you into it, but it's two different things. And when you confront them, they say, no, we want to deal with climate change. Okay, well, we don't.
Well, my opinion is they hate clean air and clean water, but that's just my opinion.
They do. They want dirty air, dirty water. Anyway, and then the last thing we did, this was we actually vote on salary increases for ourselves, which is the most unbelievable thing I've ever heard in government. But I guess we do that in all levels of government. But we shouldn't do that. I would be very much willing to say, you know what, every 4 years or every 6 years, you get an automatic something that increases it by 1% or 2% or whatever the number is. But don't have us vote on it ourselves. So I voted no on that, but that passed 3-2.
Well, that's what's going on now. So I take it next Tuesday you'll have an opportunity to go through what the agenda will be next.
Yeah, we haven't gotten the agenda yet. It'll come out later today, and then we'll be able to look through it.
So mark down your calendar. Next Tuesday you'll have a meeting at 3 and at...
Yeah, that's 3 and at 7. So it's a public hearing. There'll be some things on the public hearing when people come speak.
When we come back, we'll talk about some of the headlines in the news, including one I thought was interesting about the prevalence of insider trading. Like, that's a big shock. But there's more, and more from Bedrosian in a few minutes on News Guardians on Fox Radio 910.
This is News Guardian. News Guardian with Greg Aldridge and Chip Tarbutton on WFJX Fox Radio 910.
And we are back. News Guardians on Fox Radio 910. Now, News Guardian Al had to step out for a minute, so you're just stuck with News Guardian Chip. So I just wanted to kind of take a brief flyer around some of the headlines. As I mentioned in the first segment of the show, I went to a family function this weekend, and one of the things I found was interesting was everybody wanted to talk about politics with Chip, because Chip has a radio show, and therefore he knows all about politics. That's kind of scary, isn't it? But in any event, one of the things that I just thought walking through the headlines here on some of these things is just kind of interesting, because this is why there's so many things that the government is doing that are causing problems for individuals now that is starting to impact people's lives, at least indirectly, if not directly. So we started off with the VA scandal. That's kind of pushed off the front page of the paper, although thousands of people have died, I think, and a lot of people have been inconvenienced by a system that's it's just a mess. Now, you may have seen this over the weekend. 1/4 of the people who are receiving Obamacare subsidies may not qualify. That's reassuring. That system's going well. I found this funny. The Secretary of State and the President seem more interested in pushing the climate change agenda than, foreign policy issues like the Ukraine and Iraq and other things. So I found it interesting that after he slammed climate change deniers in a speech, he then topped on Air Force One and spewed out lots of carbon so he could get 18 holes of golf in. Found that kind of interesting. We're still being the new spokesperson, Jay Carney, who's been the spokesperson for the White House for years, is gone, and his new person is sticking by the whole Lois Lerner IRS. We lost 2 years of emails, perfectly reasonable. Have you never heard of a computer crash? Yeah, have you ever heard of a server backup? That's what you can't lose an email. But it's reassuring. I guess if you ever get audited by the government now, I guess you can just say, well, it's not my fault. I had emails disappear, and so I can't help it. Have you ever heard of a computer crashing? I doubt that'll work as well for the you as well for the IRS. So in the face of all that, I found this story, which probably won't get as much play as a lot of stories, but I think it's interesting that there's a new study's come out. There's been a lot of anecdotal evidence of people telling stories about insider trading for years, that it's rampant, that when you do a startup or you're going to make a big stock deal, that the insiders work to let their friends and relatives know and make a lot of money on it. So it's always been a story, but no one's come up with a study to show that. Well, a study's been done. And according to this, 1/4 of all public company deals may involve some kind of insider trading, according to a study by 2 professors at the Stern School of Business at New York University. And they looked at hundreds of transactions from 1996 through 2012. And what they came up with is they looked at the stock option movement when an investor buys an option to acquire stock as a way of determining whether unusual activity took place in 30 days before a deal announcement. And according to the article, the results are persuasive and disturbing, suggesting that law enforcement is woefully behind In fact, the professors, they use a modeling thing that basically said that, they looked at these and how likely would it be that they just made this big gain on their own. And according to their logic, it's about a 3 in a trillion chance that they just randomly picked the right stocks at the right time without some sort of insider trading metric happening. So what I found was interesting about this wasn't so much the story because we all know that kind of stuff is happening out there. But I think what was interesting about it is sort of what it says about where our society is on things of this nature. Because, I think people have gotten to the point now where there's an increasing number of people that have completely lost any confidence in the government. And every day they see a government that they have to follow, breaking their own rules and doing the kind of things that they ought to do, or not to do, and then making excuses for it and moving on. And people are dying. I mean, there are veterans of this country that have died and have been covered up by the federal government, who is then making more rules on more things that they can selectively enforce. And this happens to a lesser degree at the state level and a lesser degree at the local level. But at all levels of government is becoming, we talked about the first segment with Bedrosian about how the fact that the libraries are coming, people are so passionate about libraries because they're sort of like the new church of the liberal elite. So this is their religion, and you can't mess with their religion. But it's okay as long as the government's doing it. There's a different set of rules for the government than there are for you. And I think when people start to see that, they start to react differently to rules. So I'm sure there's traders all over Wall Street that say, well, the government can do whatever they want. Why can't I? And I think people are going to increasingly have that attitude, which, of course, is going to create a problem in a law-abiding, in a society that's based on the rule of law. Having everybody do their own thing with and just ignoring laws is probably not going to lead to the kind of society people want to live in. Now, what will this study likely mean for the government? Well, it'll give legislators a great excuse to make more regulations on exchanges and on stock purchases, which is always fantastic for them to make more laws that they selectively enforce or don't enforce at all. Because, it's kind of like gun laws. I mean, we need more gun laws that we don't enforce anyway. I mean, the cure for everything from a legislator's perspective is to pass another law that there's no resources for enforcing, or that the government chooses to enforce in a selective manner to only the people. Because, the FEC, the Federal Exchange Commission, has made a priority, according to them, of prosecuting insider trading. But they only pick on people they don't like. They only pick on people who are high profile with the express intent of scaring other people into behaving the way that they want them to behave. Not to try and be just or to stamp out the problem. No, they just try to do a high-profile people, and they tend to pick on people that for some reason or another have rubbed them the wrong way. Not that we want to have government have that. I mean, what's the problem with having government selectively enforce law? Oh, that's fantastic. But the larger system is that at some point when people become more and more, it becomes readily apparent to the average person who's not following politics. The person that was at the cookout with me, they're saying this now to me. Well, the government doesn't do anything they're supposed to do. They don't follow any of their own rules. That is becoming apparent to the average person who's got better things to do than read the Drudge Report every day. And when that happens, what is government going to do when people just are randomly ignoring their laws? Well, I guess you have more police. You have a huge Homeland Security Department to enforce it, to make sure you're following their rules. And this is a bad way to govern a country. Why would you treat people this way? To paraphrase my friend Greg, well, this is a horrible way to treat people, and we're getting to that point. And this story about the insider trading is just sort of the tip of an iceberg of a societal problem that we're going to be facing. Because I think it's John Adams, paraphrase John Adams, when we have our system of government based on rule of law and based on constraints on government and individual liberty is wholly inadequate to rule a people who don't have ethical standards. And when we get to a place, and we're getting there if we're not already there already, when we get to a place where ethical standards aren't enforced by the government and that a lot of people flaunt those ethical standards, then you're going to have problems. And of course, I could get all Sunday school preachy here and say, well, those standards come from a good Christian relationship with your Savior. And I can make that statement, but that might offend my atheist friends. But wherever you're getting your ethical standards from, if people don't have those standards, well, what's going to happen? You're going to have messed up people. And you have messed up people, you're going to have a messed up city. And if you have a messed up city, you're going to have a messed up state. And you have a messed up state, you're going to have a messed up country. And those messed up people are going to elect messed up representatives to go to Washington or Richmond or your city council, and they're going to make messed up decisions. So ultimately, it comes back on us to get involved. As we talked about in the first segment, the future belongs to those who show up. And unfortunately for us, if we want to make sure these things happen, we've got to show up. And that means showing up at your city council meetings, at your board of supervisors meetings, and voting and getting involved in political stuff. And we're going to take a break. Al should be wrapping up what he needed to do in a few minutes. When we come back, we're going to talk about one way you can get involved in local politics and state politics that can help get your name out there. So I'm going to take a break, and when we come back, hopefully Al will be joining us. We can talk a little bit about that and a couple other hot issues that are making the news on News Guardians on Fox Radio, on Fox Radio 910.
News Guardians on Fox Radio 910.
We are back. Well, I am back. This is your News Guardian, Chip, and I'm still waiting for Al to come back. But I did want to touch on one story before I bring Al back, and that is on immigration and the seemingly endless flow of immigrants that have been moving in, specifically because President Obama has given them almost an open invitation to come in and get amnesty. Now, I want to make sure people understand something. Immigration is a good thing. This nation is built on immigration. And, Joe Biden said something the other day that, immigration is really important. And I don't disagree with him. Illegal immigration, that is, you set rules up, make it relatively easy for people who are good, upstanding citizens to come to the United States within a certain limit and come to the States and make a process that works. I've got a good friend of mine who is from Mexico who's a legal immigrant to this country, and she's waited years to become a citizen, and she's done the right things, and it's cost her a lot of money, and it hasn't really worked for her, and she's still struggling to become a U.S. citizen. And from her perspective, if somebody jumps in front of her who just came across the border a week ago illegally and gets amnesty and gets the same more benefits than she's getting, well, that's going to be a problem. But be that as it may, what can local government do on immigration? Well, there's a lot. And there's a story on the Drudge Report about Corey Stewart, and I'll link this on newsguardians.com in a few minutes, where they've kind of led the fight with having local police authorities go in and basically round up illegal immigrants and force the U.S. government to deal with them. Now, the U.S. government is basically, they round up 7,000 people and turn them over to deportation authorities. And now it's Prince William County, and you might remember Corey Stewart. He ran for lieutenant governor in 2013. He was kind of the head of that. He was the chairman of the Prince William County Board of Supervisors. He's been leading this charge to find out what happened to those 7,000 people. And
10% they say got rearrested.
Whoops, your mic was off.
Okay, sorry about that.
Al's back.
Yeah, they said that 10% of them had gotten rearrested for new crimes after the federal government released them. So, I find what's interesting about this article, too, is that a lot of people always talk about, county government, what a bunch of rezoning issues that you do. The reality is that local governments are very, very important for so many things, and looking at even immigration issues, that they're getting involved in because the federal government's doing nothing. So we're the last line of defense that says, you know what, federal government, you don't want to do anything. State, you're not going to do anything. Okay, then it's us, the county. We're going to do something about it.
Well, the way that the founders designed the government, the county board of supervisors should be doing more government stuff than any other agency, and the state should be doing a little bit less, and the federal government should be doing those whatever limited things. Now, I think there's probably more the government needs to do than the 18 things that are listed in the original Constitution. But that's why you amend the Constitution to grant them some specific authority. But anything that's not there, last time I checked, the 10th Amendment says belongs to the people and to the states, and the states have given the local government like county boards to handle the day-to-day important things. And it's still, even with as jacked up as our government system is in America now, even as messed up as it is, the county boards still wield more power and have more impact on your day-to-day life than any other government agency.
That's right. This whole thing really should be turned upside down from what it is now, where on a daily basis people get up and they check what's going on in the federal government. You know what, really, it should be locally what's going on. Make sure that that's secure, and then the next should be state, and then the next should be the federal government.
Well, people always laugh when you say, well, government was based on biblical principles. Well, one of the things that one of the guides that they used was the way that Moses eventually sort of handled day-to-day affairs with the Israelites when they were wandering around the desert.
That's correct. You're right. It's the best representative republic type of government that you have, where you just chunk it into small chunks, and then only those things that are really, really important or at a certain level actually get to the top. You've got representatives that are handling those other issues. But you're right, and that's why I feel that when you move away from a biblically sound, biblical foundation of government, you are going to get into anarchy. I mean,
that's what Moses was pulling his hair out. He's like, I can't handle all this. Everybody's coming to me with every little dispute. And Jesse, his father-in-law, came over and said, hey, this is what you ought to do, and elect people below you to handle this and break it down and have start with like 10 and 100.
So Jesse was really the founder of our nation.
Yes. So
we can do away with our founding fathers. We can chisel right to Jesse.
We can chisel on a third. Whatever Jesse. I'm not sure what Jesse looked like, but if you could put him on the Mount Rushmore, I guess you could do that.
There you go. Now, could you imagine what that would ignite? Okay.
Oh
anyway,
no. Yes, that would be. I mean, I'm sure it would be between Jesse and Barack Obama for the fifth. Oh wow,
that's funny. Okay.
Well, we have a few minutes left. One of the things that we're working on here, and I think it'll be a great thing, is because these local issues are so important, we're working to put together a state political action committee.
Yeah.
You can tentatively called the Guardians of Liberty. And we're going to go and try to, basically work on some of these hot-button issues that Al continues to talk about. For getting people to show up, you've got to let people know that there's these issues out there. And how are you going to let people know these things are out there? You got to have a web presence. You got to be able to advertise. You got to be able to make things happen and get people to understand these issues that we keep talking about on the radio to a wider audience. So this PAC, I think, is going to help with that tremendously.
I think it will. And on a day-to-day basis, this is the thing all of us are guilty of it. We all get hyped up for one issue, and we rah, do it, and then everybody disappears. And the reality is to have a real effective, long-lasting way to deal with government and those issues is that the education process has to be nonstop. And unfortunately, I think the way our education system is today, especially with our young, is that we're not getting that. And I need to start involving a lot more homeschoolers and people in the private sector schools, too, to say, hey, start getting involved. Come to these meetings as young people. This is where things happen. Take a look at this. This is your country. Fact is that, this is going to be yours here in the next few years to take on and carry on. So the important thing is that it's a nonstop education process. We all got to work together. We can do it. The giants on the other end, I'm going to tell you right now, they are not that big. And, I always go back to the stories of Joshua and Caleb and going to Promised Land. Everybody's scared. Really, when you look at these giants that they talk about on the other side, people of liberalism, they're really not that big, and they're really not all that frightful. Once you confront them, they whimper away for the most part. We've got the truth on our side. So, folks, let's start getting involved. And I think this PAC is going to be a great thing to get people in tune, get people connected. Hey, you're going to show up at a meeting. We need a quick response to this. Boom, send out a notice to everybody. I think it's a great way to do it.
You know, when people, to follow up on your biblical reference there, when Caleb came back and the people of Moses, the Israelites had finally gotten to the promised land, sent Caleb in to take a look, and he saw all this stuff, and they had a vote. And
right.
10 of the 12 people said, don't go in now because it's just going to be too hard. And Caleb's like, no, we can do it. And they ended up wandering around the wilderness for 40 years because they didn't have the courage to stand up and do what they should have been doing all along.
That's right.
So are we going to wander in the wilderness for 40 years?
Gosh,
or are we going to
that's a great, that analogy is so perfect because you really will wander. And I kind of look at our country, because we haven't confronted issues, that if we just confronted them, takes a little courage sometimes, a little boldness. You got to, get yourself right, get ready to go. But the fact that we don't confront it, it does lead to misery too. When you're wandering around the desert for all those years and nobody lived except a few of those that stood up to actually see it. And I'm afraid in our nation it's going to be the same thing. We've got to take the stand now.
Well, you don't want to be like Moses and get on the cusp of something good and then not be able to enjoy the fruits of it because you died on before you got a chance to see it. And
right.
we understand that this could be the work of generations because it didn't.
Absolutely.
Progressives didn't ruin the country overnight. It took them 100+ years to do it, and we're not going to overnight snap our fingers and make everything right.
Right.
But the sooner you start standing up and making a difference, the sooner the change can start. So we'll have more information. We don't have a website set up or anything yet, but we'll have more information on that. But if you are excited, want to help us get it started, you can make out your check to the Guardians of Liberty. And it'll go to P.O. Box 4122, Roanoke, Virginia 24015. That's P.O. Box 4122, Roanoke, Virginia 24015. And we'll have more on this on our website and others in the next few days. But we're excited about that, and we're excited to help Al with some of his issues, as well as other people around the city, the county, and the state as they try to promote liberty. So, Al, thank you for coming in today.
Yeah, thank you very much, and look forward to seeing you guys next Tuesday.
Yeah, we'll have a lot more about the meeting for next Tuesday, I'm sure.
That's right.
All right, well, great. Well, it's been another fast hour of political talk on a state, local, and national level. Want to thank Al for coming in today. And as always, tune in to us every day from 8 to 9. You can check out these stories on newsguardians.com. And you have a fantastic day and enjoy your Tuesday.